Hello and welcome to this new edition of the Paranormal Concept Show on the PA UK network. I'm your host, Paul Rook, and we are joined, as always, by the lovely Kerry Greenaway. Hello, Kerry.
Hello, darling. How are you?
Oh, not too bad, thanks. And we're also joined in the studio by Richard Clements. Hello, Richard.
Hi. Hi, Paul. Hi, Kerry.
Yeah, you stay your side of the studio. Kerry stays her side of the studio. 2 metres apart. We're absolutely fine during this time of troubling virus and all that going on at the moment. So, yeah, just stay exactly where you are.
Okay. No one's moving. Don't you worry.
No, that's it. Everyone's afraid to move, isn't they, to be fair?
Which is good. Which is actually quite a good thing. That's what we're encouraging, is people to keep their distance from each other and isolate where possible. And, you know, follow the guidelines, guys. It's not like rocket science, is it? Follow the guidelines. Don't get freaked out by the social medias. I'm seeing so much conspiracy and scaremongering and false information being shared at the moment. So please don't get freaked out by it. Turn it off if you're starting to get freaked out. Be mindful.
The only thing that's concerning me at the moment is that Richard is right next to the exit to the studio. So
well, there you go. That's why I'm always last in, just in case there's a fire or something like that.
So while we're trapped in the studio...
we dragged someone in with us.
Yeah, absolutely. And, tonight we are joined also by Beth Darlington. Hello, Beth.
Hello, lovely people. How are you?
We're good,
I'm doing fine. I'm just trying to keep busy. Written lots of blogs this week, as Kerry knows.
Beth, he keeps sending me blogs. I'm having to, I'm spending more time editing and proofreading his blogs than I'm doing anything else at the moment. I mean, guys.
I like to keep my workforce busy, what can I say?
So,
Beth, that's about it.
Beth, tell us a little bit about yourself, because you're predominant, or first of all, you was in Australia, wasn't you? And then you've moved to the UK.
Yes. And up until probably obviously very recent, and still somewhat, loving it. The history, the access to the paranormal information and research and resources that you can get here that you just don't get in Australia. It was part of the reason why I actually moved here. I'm very lucky. I have dual citizenship. So I am half British, half Australian. So it depends what half you want to pick. And I've always felt more home here as well. Whenever I've been here before, I've travelled here before. I lived here 10 years ago for a couple of years myself, which actually started officially started my paranormal journey, I guess you could say. So I've loved it being here. As I said, the history, but written history in Australia, we just don't have the written history. We have a lot of history as far as our Indigenous Australians, like thousands and thousands, like 60, 70,000 years worth. But it's not. It's all by spoken word within the Indigenous Australian tribes, which was completely understandable. But to be able to come to a location where it's actually a lot more solidified about written word, and actually be able to trace back and go to places like, I think it was only a couple of months ago, I was in Denmark and Sweden, and I'm going to a Viking boat museum. This is the kind of stuff of dreams, in Australia that you sort of be punching yourself to get over to, sort of thing. So really making the most clearly of being at this part of the world where the rest of the world, as I've often said, is. So yeah, I'm loving it.
You've done quite a lot of travelling up to recently. It's been curtailed recently. But you're really using UK as a hub to get out and about, aren't you? And you're doing so much. I'm seeing was it Marrakesh you was at a little while ago?
That is exactly right. At the point of this recording, it was probably about 3 to 4 weeks ago. It was probably more than likely my last hurrah for a little while yet. And I always live in hope. But yeah, Marrakesh as well. It's and that's a very different ball game again. I to be honest, I was quite worried a little bit about going, because it's the first time for me to be in an environment where it's a country that has very different ways of living, but also at the same time very different ways of how to deal with people, how people are to be able to behave in public, but the thing is, I wanted to go because it was going to push me in that way, and I think and it was one of the best experiences I've ever had. I loved the whole thing. I loved the markets, the souks as they call them. It was just, once you've done your research, something different. I wouldn't do that as a paranormal investigator. Hell no. And sort of like taking it all in and having that, obviously it's common sense, and it's like today, it's common sense and doing your research and then going in and with a positive attitude, and literally that's what it was, and I had the best experience ever. And I was even able to speak to one guy when we did a day tour, and I sort of cornered him aside and I made sure nobody in the tour was around. I'm like, so what are your beliefs of the afterlife?
Is there a general interest in this sort of thing over there, or is it? I would imagine they'd be quite against it.
Again, they take it very much from a very, very similar to a Christian mentality, where you do good things. Like the Moroccan flag, I found fascinating, because when you look at it, it is red as a background and it's green as what looks like to me is the Star of David, and each of those points to, one is faith, one is to pray every day, one is about charity, one is about being good to other people. It's literally, and I obviously don't not remembering all of it, but there was really a big emphasis on being able to go and pray and do good things and have charity and give to people. It's a very much of that. And I wanted to get to the side of like, well, okay, so this is very important for this country and for your beliefs. Why is that? And there was, people I've spoken to that were able to sort of feel comfortable in speaking to me about it, because I always made sure, because not everybody in every country is going to want to talk to someone coming in and say, what do you think? Like you just, you've got to gauge, where what's safe to speak about and what's not, because you're talking about the afterlife. And sometimes there are countries that you'll go into where speaking about the afterlife can be a big no-no. So I was kind of broaching quite nicely, and they said it's the same kind of thing. It's if you do these things and continue to do so, you feel good as a person here, but also when you pass over, you go to heaven. So a big part of their flag is about making sure that they do good things here, but also that things are well once they pass over. And I thought that was a really interesting thing, because there's nothing like that on the Union Jack.
No, that's about coming together, isn't it? The Union Jack. Yeah. It's about all the union of the various countries, as it were, that join together, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. That's it. But it's about being here now, not necessarily about what you're going to think about once you pass over, which I thought was a very interesting take on that perspective. Yeah.
Oh, I feel a block coming on there, Paul.
I would say that the Union Jack is only referenced as the Union Jack when it's at sea.
Oh.
When it's inland, it's the Union flag.
That's correct.
Yeah.
Ooh, I didn't know that.
Now we do now. So it's the Union flag.
Keep flagging.
So you're always out and about, Beth. I've seen. Gosh, you're never in, are you? If you're not wandering the streets of London looking at the history, or investigating, or attending a function of some form. What's your favourite thing been so far since you hit the UK?
Oh gosh, it's like picking your favourite child. Carrie, you can't say that.
Oh, pick it.
It's just, and even in our current climate at the moment, I still can't. I'm trying to hate London, but I still can't. I don't know. There must be something in my blood from my mum. There's just so many things I love about and have loved about since being here. It's the exposure to the knowledge that you've got here from a parapsychological perspective, and actually to me it's like walking through authors and books of people that you would have heard about in Australia, or would have seen a link about, or seen a video about. Now I get to walk amongst, like, I know it sounds a bit I can say like a bit over the top by saying so, but I'm kind of walking amongst legends when I go to these particular locations with these organisations. I'm walking amongst people that I've read about and seen and learned about for many years, and then now I'm actually speaking to these people or hearing about them, and then I speak to that person and I find somebody else and I look at their background. I'm like, I had no idea this person had all this research about, psi phenomena, or they're like, John Fraser with his poltergeist syndrome and all these different wonderful avenues. You're like, wow, can I empty your brain and find out what's going on in there? It's literally, it's almost like it's the paranormal. It's a rabbit warren, but I'm in a physical rabbit warren at the moment. I'm going through from an academic and learning perspective, and hashtag mind blown. Like, it literally, like, go out. I know I need to get out more. Surprise. But yeah, it feels, I'm getting so much from it, and the connections and the people and the passion, like on tenfold compared to what it would been like in Australia to have the privilege to be around people that have spent so much time learning and researching, and it's been fabulous. So yeah, I can't pick any one great big thing. It's been a culmination at the moment, and I think it will be soon too. I mean, I'm hashtag in hope.
We're all in hope that this is going to pass over quickly, I will say that, because we were supposed to meet, weren't we, Beth? And we had to cancel it for one reason or another, and then this hit. So we were like, oh, no.
Oh, man. We've got to reschedule, girlfriend. We've got to reschedule.
Oh, we most certainly will. Now, I just want to give a shout-out to John Fraser. You just referenced his book, Poltergeist. He's written this amazing book, everybody. Beth has done a review on Spooky Isles about that. Can you give us a quick rundown of what that book is? Because it's hit the academic circles more than the ghost hunting community, I feel. So it would be great for people to get a bit more of a feel for that book. Can you give us a quick synopsis?
Yeah, totally. I was obviously, having met John a couple of times, and when he had the first very limited release of the book, I was able to get a copy. So that's the first thing I did. And I'm very good mates with David Saunderson, who runs Spooky Isles, and he's like, "Would you do a book review?" Because I've never done one before. I'm like, well, that's fine, because normally as a researcher, I would read a book for myself. So it's a very different process when you're actually reading a book to write for a website that's not your own. So that was my first challenge. So I'm like, okay, well, how I literally, it's just like sort of like a brain dump basically, and then just kind of editing it afterwards. That's how I sort of really did it. But the book itself is a fascinating look about the different types of ways in which we can look at poltergeist phenomena. The beginning part of it, he really challenged anomalistic psychology, and I'm a big fan of that and have been for a while. But so reading that was kind of like eating a lemon. But every now and then lemons are good for you. Mm-hmm. So I was eating this lemon and squinching my face up, going, I don't know about this. But he made some really good points, and I sometimes feel like I feel that way with reading skeptical information as well. Like I'm like, this is harsh, but I got to read it. It's literally taking the bad cough medicine. So it's I read through it, and it's like he makes some really good valid points. It's trying to be as neutral as possible, and then he goes into the different types of ideas of where it could branch off to. So if someone's experienced something poltergeist wise, okay, so how are we going to be able to investigate this properly? Because often with a poltergeist phenomena, it can be sporadic, more so than ever, but only happens for maybe a couple of months. Then by the time they've got half the decent people to actually come in and really properly investigate it, the phenomenon is probably already gone. Mm-hmm. So there's that aspect of it, and there are all these beautiful historical cases that he's gone through, and his experiences in his hometown as well, and also the possibility of folklore. So maybe there's a way that there's over thousands of years, technically, there's been different types of countries and people in different parts of the world that may have possibly what we consider poltergeist activity was actually not. What could have actually been poltergeist activity, but they've called it something else. So the jinn or something, all different types of things, just incredible. And it really kind of branches and evolves that particular idea. And you start to think about maybe poltergeist activity isn't as uncommon as we think it is if we look at it in a certain way. So it really does. It's a fabulous book, and I love the way it's written, because for me, I get through maybe the first 4 paragraphs of an academic paper, and I'm sitting there thinking, are we there yet? Literally sometimes it can feel that way. This book is nothing like that at all. It's written in a way that's intelligent, and it's the middle level investigators. You've got to have a little bit of experience or have a little bit of knowledge of different cases. It's not too hard. It mentions Enfield and Amityville Horror House, that kind of stuff, as a reference. But it really is written in such a great way where you do understand it. And to me, I really did find it very difficult to put it down. And I very rarely get through a book like in a certain period of time. And yes, okay, a deadline probably was part of that. But at the same time, I actually enjoyed the process of reading this book and getting so much out of it. So it was definitely worth it. Definitely worth it.
So do you think poltergeist cases in a whole are still happening to the degree they were, or that they've petered off? What's the right word there? Petered off? Yeah. Anyway, do you think that we're still experiencing them, or do you think that they're not as common as they once were?
I think that we are definitely experiencing them just as much as we were. I just think we're just more aware of what they are more now, and a lot more sceptical about the approach in what they could be. I think we're a lot more open to the fact that there's more explanation for what could be happening as opposed to what's not. So I think the frequency is probably still there, but I think what's happening more now is that we're looking more so gradually that there are other explanations to what could actually be possibly causing it. That's my personal opinion on it. But it's a very hard phenomena to try and investigate because, again, like with most, if not all paranormal phenomena, is spontaneous. We're really kind of like literally like throwing slime on the wall and seeing what sticks, really.
Paul?
Yeah, no, I agree. And I think, my personal experience of poltergeist activities, I'm more inclined to put them down to a telekinesis event as opposed to like evil entity, ghost sort of thing, because obviously there are links to other poltergeist cases, so it's never a unique experience, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I've sort of all the paranormal phenomena out there, I mean, poltergeist activity does seem to be the one that, if there was a big push in that direction by, a large group of people and resources, is something I think we might be able to learn a lot more about, and dare I say even sort of crack what a poltergeist actually is.
Yeah,
absolutely.
I mean, I have to say, when we was at the Nameless Art conference last year, we were we were blessed to actually have a speaker who works very much with occult practice and ritual practice, and he was saying, be prepared for activity. It will happen. You are going when you're doing these rituals. You're inviting that to happen, so don't get freaked out when it does. A lot of people do these rituals, and then all of a sudden stuff's happening, and they're thinking, "Oh my God, no!" But that's the point of it. You know what I mean? So it does argue the case of the telekinesis or the invitation, or are you setting your mind into that mindset that creates it? It's a whole interesting phenomena in its own right. That particular aspect of the paranormal, isn't it?
Oh, absolutely, absolutely, and even the people called jottles. When objects will appear and reappear. Like, is that a type of poltergeist phenomena that we kind of haven't really put into that? Is it just one of those things, which is what jottle stands for? Like, where do we draw the line, sort of thing? Is it actually something that is possibly more into the poltergeist area?
Yeah, I can actually definitely get the jottles. I think I've got several in my flat. I mean, I'm always putting stuff down and never finding it again. I mean...
Well, no, I'll be honest with you, right? And I'll tell you a little funny story while we're here, little anecdote. And I was talking about giving up smoking, okay? And I said that in May, they're going to stop all the menthol smoking factor.
Right.
And I said, right, okay. So I was talking to my friend, and we were sitting in my dining room, chatting away, smoking, as you do. I said, right, when they stop all the menthols, I'm going to stop smoking because I don't like normal cigarettes. Now, I know I'd bought a pack of filters in my bag, right? Ran out, went to my bag to find my filters. Could I find them? No, I couldn't. Did I not smoke because I didn't have any filters? No, I didn't. Anyway, the next day she popped round. This was before all of this, Corona stuff. I then found them. And I went, they proved to me that I failed. I failed the non-filter thing. Because they disappeared and I had that handbag out, literally across the whole table. I'd sorted my handbag out from all the debris that's in handbags. And then the next day, they were there. And it was almost like, it was like a point of, see? You know what I mean? It was really strange. So I reckon they took the filters just to prove a point, and then they put them back and went, see, she failed that test.
Yeah, he wasn't ready to give them up yet.
This is it. But I am going to do it. I am going to do it. I promise. I've promised myself. So, Beth, you're very, very much involved in the in ASAP and SPR, which I'd like to come on to in a bit. But first of all, you run your information service for the paranormal through Access Paranormal, which is primarily on Facebook, isn't it?
Yeah, it seems to be the most popular forum for yeah.
And you've been doing the top 10 tips for paranormal enthusiasts that they can do whilst we're in lockdown. And actually, quite a few things have come out from that that's really interesting to me. Your one today, well, not today. It won't be today because we're pre-recording, but, you know, the one you were talking about today was positive people, keeping positivity around you, which, like, at the head of the show, I said there's a lot of false information. So we're talking about basing yourself in good research and good sources of information, but also keeping around you very positive people. So what were the other tips you were coming out with to keep us enthusiasts fulfilled in our paranormal interest?
Well, it's hard. As I said, I'm lucky to be able to have access to the kind of information I do at work because I am a certified mental health first aider here in the UK now. So I've obviously it's an internationally recognised qualification. I was certified in Australia, but that actually lapsed for about a couple of months, and then I was lucky enough to have, obviously because it lapsed, I then had the recertification here in the UK. So by doing that, I also get lots of really, really good information about people's well-being, keeping people happy and centered, and you know, looking out for other people as well. I think I'm also in my job considered what they call, or had training of what is known as a mental health champion. So that basically means that I just kind of eyeball out in an office when you're in an office. You know, making sure people, if there's any changes in people's behaviour, just kind of sussing it out. And if they're not feeling so great, or if they want to have a chat, you can have a chat and then let them know that there are other services around. So that's a big passion of mine. I think that's come from doing a lot of private cases in Australia where, you've got to kind of be a good sounding board when you're looking at possibly dealing with a private case to know whether you're qualified enough to be able to take it on or not. And I'm certainly not when it comes to someone who's going through a very intense mental health issue. But yeah, these tips are just an idea and a way to be able to help people through this particular situation, which is how paranormal investigators can deal with self-isolation in this interesting environment. Because let's face it, this is a very unique situation. It's not one none of us want to be in, but we're in it. So how do we deal with it? And there's things like, how to reach out to other paranormal investigators, calling them every day, saying, hey, mate, what's going on? I have a list of people that I make sure I contact either on a daily basis or every couple of days. I know people may think, well, hang on, can't you just naturally do it for me? If it's not in front of me, I won't remember. But I do that as a reminder for myself as well, to make sure that, I'm kind of touching base with people. And I encourage that for paranormal investigators as well in their teams. Hey, keep that regular stuff going, because they do that with organisations now. Why isn't that, you shouldn't do that with your team as well, just because at the moment we can't physically go out to locations and investigate at the moment. Also reminding yourself there is good stuff still going on. Also, I've spoken about recommended books and paranormal topics. So there's so many great books out there, depending on what sort of avenue you really want to take on. If you want to go down the research, academic side of it, if you want to do the whole actively investigating paranormal side of it, there's books for that too. If you want to read about true ghost stories. I think I even dug one out, a book that I carried with me in one of my very few bags when I first came over, which is about the London Underground and the ghost stories there as well. So I'll be digging back into that book as well. Little things like that. How to plan your next investigation. So even though you're not actively doing it at the moment, plan your next one. Go, right, where's the location that would be amazing for me to go to? Can I do it? Do I have the means to do it? Can I save up for it? What's a good time? Because now we have the time. Thinking about the circumstances that you can control at the moment. So, today I'm going to get up and I'm going to do a bit of reading, and I'm going to, obviously, if people are working from home, fantastic, you can do that, all that kind of stuff. So there's lots of great little tips and that sort of thing.
I think that's a really good idea. I mean, I don't know about you guys, you boys, but I've got hundreds of books I've bought, started reading, a bit like you, Beth, got a couple of chapters in, didn't really float my boat, but I thought, I'll come back to that, and I haven't. And I've got loads of books like that I haven't picked up yet. I'm reading Supernatural at the moment by Colin Wilson, which is a fantastic case study. And actually, I'm only sort of a bit into it, but already I've learned stuff about psychometry and mesmerization and hypnotism that I didn't know before, because studies that were done back in the 1800s that I just didn't know about. So it's always worth, and that side of it interests me more than perhaps going out on an investigation. Particularly with the rise of certain centres that are around now, where you can go and do the psychometry thing. It gives you information to then, when you can go back out in the field, expand your ability to maybe understand it or form experiments around that yourself, right, guys?
Well, yeah, I mean, as Beth was saying, books, and you, Kerry, as well, and I've had this book since it came out. It must have been out for about a good 3 or 4 months now, is Steve Parsons' guidance notes for investigators of spontaneous cases. It's the first time I've actually had time to get round to reading it. So, yeah, thoroughly enjoying it.
That's a great book. That's really good practical information. That's one of the ones I recommended in one of my tips as well. So I like, and as you said, Kerry's like, oh my gosh, there's a book here. I might. I remember seeing it like a sort of a spoof meme thing. It's like, now we're in lockdown, we get to know what a book is, and someone picks it up and says, "What's this?" Like it literally is a bit like that at the moment. It's like, I have a book, I should probably read it.
But as you were saying, Beth, this is a good time for teams out there to actually sort of refocus and sort of actually start to do research and sort of read books and stuff like that, and start to reground and perhaps even redirect when they do go back out in the field armed with hopefully more knowledge.
Absolutely. My heart does go out to those who do run events, though. I know this is going to be extremely challenging for them. I definitely know that my mates in Australia that I've been working with closely for many years are certainly feeling this, because for some of them it's their main source of income, and they're really feeling the pinch of, obviously understanding why they have to, but at the same time it's they're sole traders, so the government won't cover them as far as income, so they've basically got what they've got and that's it. So it's quite difficult for them. And Australia, it's much smaller than it is here. Hopefully the companies here are going to be able to at least survive a little bit, because we're going to need you guys when it all comes up and running. Because I'm going to want to go to somewhere soon. So yeah, it's my heart goes out to that as well. So there is that flip side, teams can learn and grow and read and reassemble, but there's those that run events and paranormal investigations that are probably going to really, really feel this.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. But hopefully they will come back and be fine throughout the period. Hopefully, fingers crossed. So we wish all of those people who rely on that income all the very best, and hopefully it will resolve sooner rather than later. Paul, you were going to say something.
Yeah, I was going to say, I mean, at the moment, the only book I've got access to is actually the Book of Parasearch. And it's full of interesting books, interesting blogs from all different presenters of the old Parasearch network. and it's available worldwide on Amazon for $7.99.
Nice plug there, babes. Nice plug
Bargain, bargain. Get out there and do it, man.
Absolutely, yeah. But no, seriously though, I'm enjoying at the moment sitting down and just having the time to write blogs. I've got all these ideas for these blogs, and I actually enjoy surfing the web and just picking out the various information that I want and need for my blog, and just letting it flow. And I'm enjoying doing the research that way. To be fair,
there are loads of books online, though, aren't there, as well? I think that's a resource that people shouldn't overlook. You don't actually have to physically buy a book. You can get a lot of books online now that are accessed. I mean, quite a lot of time when I'm researching it, it'll pull up actually a book reference on the web. So, there is a lot of information out there. So if you are stuck for books or reading information, out there, there is a hell of a lot that you can access with a little bit more Google searching. Do you know what I mean? In the first two or three
absolutely.
pages.
I don't. Yeah, I mean, I don't just do like a quick Google search and then come up with the first few sites there are out there about this particular whatever subject I'm doing. I do sort of scratch underneath the surface and try and get information that isn't quite as well known as most of the other stuff. But then that's where the book of Parasearch is actually quite good. Because it does come up with ideas and concepts itself, and people can research and go into that a lot further. So there's tons of ideas in that book.
It's like the paranormal rabbit hole, though. I mean, back in the old days, we talked about surfing the net, and it was basically you'd start off in a point and then you'd end up in somewhere completely different. And I find this quite a lot when I'm researching for a show or something. I'll be searching one point, and then I'll end up somewhere completely different because there's been a link that I thought, I didn't realise that connected through, and it leads you down to a whole different thing. So going down the old surfing the internet with your research is quite a good thing because it opens you up to different ideas that you wouldn't necessarily have gone. So try that again, guys, because I tell you something that could. I think I was researching something. I can't remember what I started with, but I ended up on crop circles. But what I'd researched right at the beginning had nothing to do with crop circles. But the pathway led me down to connect into all of a sudden crop circles. I'm thinking, how the hell did I get from here to here? But it was just one of those.
Well, that's it. I mean, a prime example is when we done the show on Men in Black. We started with Men in Black, but it led me to like the Mothman. We were talking about the Mothman prophecies, and then we even mentioned Thunderbirds. Yeah. And I thought, that's actually a good topic for a blog. So I've written a blog that hasn't been published yet on the Thunderbird.
Yeah, it was like a couple of days ago when Kerry suggested perhaps a blog for me to write on William Hope, the spirit photographer. I thought, I'll go and do that. And I went in and I started to research, and I ended up being sidetracked on something to do with animal trials and executions from the Middle Ages, which was way off base, but absolutely fascinating. So there's two blogs coming your way, Kerry.
But this is the whole point, isn't it? You research, start researching, start looking at that information online if you haven't got those books to read, because you'll be surprised at some of the websites you'll find and some of the information that's out there that's credible sources as well, that's well researched. And I'm sure you found the same, Beth.
Oh, absolutely, and I completely understand your journeys through your research. It's the same thing with me. Like I'll go down one path, I'm like, I've not seen that before. That looks interesting. And I've heard that before. Actually, now suddenly I'm interested in it as opposed to just hearing about the topic. So it literally, you go down that path, and that's what I love about it. That's why, that's the joy of research, is being able to find these little paths and then make notes and then go back to them when you've got time to be able to actually explore it further and see whether or not that's going to add to your knowledge base about, possible explanations or possible reasons and knowledge for what we do and why we love what we do with it when it comes to the paranormal.
Oh, I totally, and that's actually become more of a interest to me than actually going out in the field and investigating. I'm not saying I don't like investigating, because I do, but I find that quite samey. No disrespect to anybody out there, but I find that very generically TV copied. So if in this interim of time we can look at these things and maybe progress the field of investigation quite a lot, taking this information we're learning and maybe trying some of the older experiments that have been done, and looking at it scientifically, critically minded, we may, you never know, be able to progress the field more, because we've got this breathing space, this time where we can look into, things that we may have not had a chance to look at before. I just find this whole situation, in a way, it's a relief that we're all stuck indoors, because then the situation is then defined for you personally. You don't go out, you self-isolate, you stay in, you follow the guidelines. But you've got all this time now, which you wouldn't normally get in normal life. It pulls you in so many different directions on a daily basis. You don't get to watch that documentary, read that book, do some research, look into that particular aspect that finds you find interesting to the depth you'd like to, perhaps. Now you have.
Absolutely, and I think it's going to be very interesting to see, even in the next month or two, maybe even the next 6 months, to see what type of information people produce, or events or ideas, what's going to come out of this, because we've kind of almost been pulled back and told to rest, really, like you say. So, it's almost like, what's going to come out, what awesome stuff's going to come out from this.
Oh, yeah.
Well, that's right. It's like the old budgerigar in the cage, and someone throws a blanket over and it's gone to roost. We're just waiting for that blanket to be lifted off now to see where we go from here.
Oh, we've only just had the blanket put on, love. We've only just had that.
I know. Well, excuse my analogy there.
That's a fabulous analogy. So that's a great way to look at it. It's like, literally, we have had the blanket over the cage. So it's like, now what are you going to do? You can sit in the cage and kind of not do anything, or make the most of it and then come out of it with something really awesome. So, yeah, totally.
I am looking forward to them when we are released again. Some of the experiments that the field hopefully have evolved whilst they're on this break, this breathing space. I'm really looking forward to that and hoping that happens. Really am. So now, another thing you said was documentaries, films and documentaries that you can watch. And I know our Richard has been doing that too, looking at that kind of information out on the web that's freely available on YouTube and places like that. What I always enjoy the Afterlife documentary on the skull experiment.
Oh, okay, fair enough. Interesting.
That's one of my favourites. Now, I've read the book since as well, and it's amazing how much information got missed out of that documentary, actually. So it's been really interesting to me to having watched that documentary to reading the book, and how much information did get missed out. But I always find that one fascinating, guys.
Oh, right. I was actually trying to look for another documentary to post up during the week. So what's that, the Afterlife one? So I'll have to do that.
Yeah, on the skull experiment. Have you seen that one?
Oh, okay.
I have heard of it. I've definitely heard of it. I've seen bits of it. I've not actually watched the whole thing from the beginning to the end. And I've read bits and pieces of it. But like now you've mentioned it, it's like, okay, that's going to be something I want to put on my list of things to actually look at research over this next couple of weeks. It's, it was a very, very significant experiment, as we all know, considering the fact that there was, a group of people over time building. There was a paranormal experiment event that I went to and was part of in Australia probably about 4 or 5 years ago. Goodness, time flies when you're having fun. And we were using Maitland Jail. I do live in London. There are still sirens going, bless. If you hear that in the background. But we went to a particular location called Maitland Jail, and what we did were experiments. So one of the experiments was a guy called Dan McMath. And he actually was intentionally beforehand, people getting there, trying to create a somewhat of a Philip experiment before people got there, and then actually telling them what this person, this entity was like, and recreating it that way. He had some very interesting results from that as well. I, on the other hand, had Satan's Cell, and I was playing dear Annalise Michaels' exorcism through it. So, and it's called Satan's Cell because somebody who was a Satanist actually used to practice in there, and then ended up setting themselves on fire, unfortunately. And the warden at the time actually had to end up cleaning this person's remains up, and ended up killing himself afterwards. So, yeah, as you do. So, but apart from that, Philip experiment. It was very, very interesting. He said he had some interesting results. And he also became quite intensely involved in himself. That's the best way I could explain about how his experience went. So, yeah, in Australia, we kind of do things a little differently.
You certainly do. That sounds a little intense, that one.
Surprise! Don't come to Australia. It's not the snakes and spiders, it's the spirits that will kill you.
All right, note to self, never going to Australia. Another good reason why not to. Oh, my Lord. Oh, don't try that one at home, kids. Research that one. Protect yourself whilst you're out in investigations. All I'm saying.
Yeah, definitely.
Paul, what's been one of your favourite documentaries cases that you've looked into?
I'm quite into my science fiction and things like that, even more so now. And I actually like quite watching the Ancient Aliens TV series, because some of their ideas are so far out and radical that it's just like, really? I just love those documentaries because they're just so funny. But yeah, I mean, I like the science and nature stuff. Part of the paranormal that I really do find fascinating is the cryptozoology stuff, and cryptids and cryptoids and whatnot, And in the UK, it's all very samey. It's like either big cats. You've got like a Bigfoot sighting as well, apparently. How true that is, I ain't got a clue. But in America, they've got so many weird and wacky, wonderful things. I mean, you've got like obviously the Mothman that we were talking about the other day. You got the Thunderbird, which is a giant eagle type thing. Then obviously you've got like swamp monsters, and it's amazing. It is.
Cryptos, but again, when we was researching the Men in Black and when we read the Mothman prophecies, there is that crossover between ufology and going back to poltergeist activity. They had a lot of poltergeist activity at the same time as these ufology encounters were going on at the same time. So people go, it's not connected. It kind of is. It just shows you how interconnected it all is. Isn't that right, Beth?
Absolutely. There's lots of documented cases where people have actually, as you say, experiencing something like a location I would love to have had to visit. I don't think you can now, but Skinwalker Ranch, and the Skinwalker, that sort of things. And people have seen lights in the sky as well as being there, and obviously having poltergeist activity. A lot of people who've felt that they've had encounters have also had objects move in the house as well. So who's to say it's not just isolated incidences? It could actually be a culmination of things. So yeah, it's very probable, from what people have reported over the years. Absolutely.
And there certainly seems to be a move in some sort of researchers actually trying to connect the two now. And I think this all came in a big sort of peak not all that long ago with the Hellier series which seemed to deal with both sides and taking it over.
I liked that series. I have to say I'm a huge fan of the Hellier crowd, as it were. Greg and Dana Newkirk, I was lucky enough to speak to them. And they're so well researched as well. And talking about research, that is one thing that's very paramount in everything. It starts, series 2, or season 2 as they call it, starts off basically researching off the back of everything they experienced in the first one, and led them, you could see the rabbit holes it led them down on, and road trips they were doing just off the back of the research, and then it seemed to kick off again. And then it led them down into a very mythological, with Pan and rituals and bringing that kind of lore into it. But still this weird theme of what else is it? It's an incredibly amazing series, guys. If you haven't caught it, I definitely suggest you go and catch it, just because that will blow your mind in regards to how a paranormal rabbit hole can occur through a case.
Yeah.
Mm.
I mean,
And that's what.
Richard,
Yeah,
for
go.
example,
Yes.
Pardon?
Oh, sorry. Yes, go. Oh.
Paul?
I was going to say, me and Richard, for example, we've done all these road trips, and that sort of led us down rabbit holes. So we've actually ordered a Winnebago for our road trip next season.
If only.
So at the moment, it's on hold because obviously the coronavirus and everything. But we're hoping the Winnebago will be finished very soon, and we could go off and carry on.
Well, yeah, we just need to get a film crew. And
They
then
wish.
we'll be set.
They wish, Beth. They wish. What did you make of Helia, Beth, from a researcher perspective?
It's hard because for me, I saw them at MI Paragon, Michigan Paragon, in obviously Detroit. Sorry, not Detroit, Michigan. Last year in August, and they were doing a panel discussion on Helia itself, and they showed bits, and it was like a Q&A, and you could ask them questions about because it was the first part of it, the first series of it. I know that there was controversy in the skeptic environment. Oh gosh, probably about 5 years ago, because originally there were quite very skeptical people considered in this skeptical environment, and a lot of people in the skeptical community then thought they kind of sold themselves by doing this traveling museum originally, Weekend in the Weird. They kind of copped a lot of flack from that, and then now suddenly they're selling themselves in this doco. So I've kind of come in from that angle, so I'm a little bit more reserved on what the information they're providing. So far so good, and there have been people that I follow that I respect, that support, so again I take that into consideration as well. So I do think it's their first series was quite intriguing and good, and it does explain, like you say, it's very typical of cases. You will go into if you go into a really good case of something that's quite substantial phenomena-wise, you will go rabbit warrening. You will go down certain paths, and I've had that in Australia, and I haven't had it here yet, but I've had it in Australia. Or no, maybe it's very rare, but it does happen where you literally go through warrant. But that's how you learn as an investigator. You're not going to learn from a book all the time. It's going to be experience. You're going to know, okay, so someone's going to come to you at this particular, speak to you this particular way, or mention these particular type of things to you, where it's like, oh, I just feel this, or I want to do that. And it's like, okay, well, this is actually what else could be going on apart from what you think it might be. That comes from experience, and that comes from repeated experience over time. So for me, I keep an open mind. I'm probably a little on the skeptic side, but I am totally open to at least being proven wrong on that. As I said, I've seen a lot of support for Helia from a lot of reputable people, and I'm happy to be proven wrong on that. So, but again, I did actually like the first one. I wasn't overly overwhelmed by it, but I'm happy. I haven't seen the second one yet, so maybe I'll be convinced, and I'm happy to be convinced. So be it.
Well, as I say, I think I did really like it. I'm not going to lie. I am a fan of the Helia series for many reasons, because it makes me think. It pushes my boundaries. It makes me, particularly when in the second series, when Dana was starting to do more spiritual work with it. This is later in the second series. Spoilers if you haven't seen it, by the way. Towards the end, they start bringing factors in that I work with, rather than just, because I do a lot of spiritual work on the side and privately that I don't put out in public very often. And so for that side of it, bringing that into the field as well was incredibly fascinating to me. So like I say, I like it because it makes me think, and it shows me that the rabbit warrens are there for everybody. It's not just like, I've been accused of being a butterfly researcher and a sporadic researcher before now, and that for me shows me that everybody's like that, really. It's just it's just how that journey of your personal understanding of the paranormal is, for everybody. It's just, and that's what that shows to me, and it makes me think, and I like things that make me think.
See, it's not just like paranormal documentaries like that can lead you down interesting paths. I mean, last year, for example, I was watching an episode of Casualty on TV, which is a medical drama, totally fiction, but it done a storyline of dementia, and the character in the program started hallucinating. So I thought to myself, well, can they actually see spirit if their mind's reverting back to a childlike state? Children, as we know, quite a lot in the paranormal, can pick up spirit or see spirit because it's almost like their minds are so underdeveloped that they're more open and susceptible to spirit. So would that work in the case of a dementia patient as well? So I sort of like that led me down into a whole different, region of in-depth research on dementia and the link between the paranormal and spirits and stuff like that. So it doesn't have to be something like Helia.
No, it doesn't.
No. Down these rabbit holes.
No, that was just one example of, something that gets you thinking and looking at things in maybe a different way and connecting dots that you might not have connected before. But you're right. I mean, that's a very shamanic way of viewing, the afterlife or, spirit attachment and stuff like that. It's a very shamanic way of looking at it. They look at it as very much that way. And I know Terence, what was his name? Dr. Terence Palmer. Dr. Terence Palmer was working very much in that way as well. And he's a member of the SPR, isn't he, Beth?
That's exactly right. Yeah, he certainly is. Yeah, I remember him very well.
Yeah, I was lucky enough to talk to him, and again, incredibly controversial. What he's proposing and some of the experimentation he's doing is very looked at very skeptically and very, ethically as well in some ways. But he's trying his best, and if he's helping people, which he seems to have done, correct, Beth? Am I right in that?
Yeah, definitely, yeah.
But it's a case of keep working at it, keep looking at it, keep questioning, those boundaries and those limits, and why couldn't it be something like that rather than just it be? I'm not saying there aren't mental health. I think there is, but it possibly is another reason for it as well. But you have to be very, very careful with cases like that. I will put that disclaimer out there. You do have to be very, very careful and not put it all down to spiritual. You know what I mean? You have to look at certain conditions and certain medicines, things like that, because the brain is an incredibly complex thing. It's one of those, we still don't know, do we, an awful lot about the brain. We know bits, but it's one of the main organs that we don't actually know huge amounts about, of how it works and the capacity of it, what it can actually achieve. So when we start looking at that, it makes this, again, another dimension to the paranormal field, isn't it? It's like learning the differences and going down that rabbit hole, which in itself could be a whole lifetime case study.
Yeah.
Yep.
And the brain itself could be another dimension we just don't know about.
Oh, here we go. It's off into multi-dimensions again. It does have its multi-dimensions.
Just think the station locker in MIB. When you open it up and it's like, oh, Howard J.
Oh,
we just don't know.
We just don't know. But they were talking. The left and the right side, controls different sides of things, and different parts of the brain do different things, and different things trigger different things in the brain. It is, that in itself is a fascinating, and when you start reading into things like that. But how unreliable is the human body? We think it's a reliable, one size fits all kind of thing, but it doesn't, does it? I mean, you only even have to look at the one tiny organ of the eye to know how unreliable that bit is. People... Yeah. It's fascinating. And, I remember reading about birds' eyes. They used to think that they were, the electromagnetic fields were picked up in a protein in the eye, which we actually have in our pineal gland. And it was like, so is that why we get experiences? Because that protein is what's important. And that particular night, when I was looking at that, blew my mind, because that opened up a whole different field, links into the spiritual, but links into science. And it was like, oh my God, do you know what I mean? Is that it? Is that the explanation, that just down to a protein that is in different parts of like a bird that's how they were looking at migration of birds, was how do they actually migrate and why they can follow the same routes. And it was all to do with this protein that's in the second eyelid of a bird that, again, links into this protein in our pineal gland. And it was crazy when I actually started thinking about that and thought, God, that opens up so many possibilities and so much information to take in about that. Just that one thing, just that one tiny thing that led me down a whole different rabbit hole. It's crazy, isn't it?
Yeah.
Gotta love you, rabbit holes.
Beth, what's the most bizarre, should we say bizarre, or interesting rabbit hole that you've been down recently? Because I know there's probably hundreds over the years, but recently, let's narrow it down a bit.
Oh, but now you got to narrow it down. I think possibly for me, ironically, was actually, if we go back to John Fraser's book Poltergeist, he brought up the possibility that there's a part of the brain that is the oldest developed. So it's the one that develops first when we're in the room and we're kind of like becoming ourselves. There's links to the possibility that that's where we get our possible psychic ability from. Now, I thought that was interesting because then when it comes to possible poltergeist activity, what skews that? You know, is there a skew to it, or is it connected to that at all? So that to me has been a rabbit warren that I'm like, oh, I'm going to need some time on this one. Oh boy.
You almost feel like you become a neurologist at some point, don't you? Because you're doing so much research.
The most unqualified psychologist, neurologist, environmental scientist, everything.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, you have to though, and it's reading, and it's, you know, I would love for there to be a course somewhere from people who are based academically to support those types of sciences, to help people who investigate possible paranormal phenomena. So you have an element of psychology, an element of neurology, an element of environmental sciences, an element of all different parts, you know, of that sort of like investigating, fact-finding stuff, and have that built for investigators. I would just love that. I'll be like, sign me up, man. You're the
best. Well, there you go, Kerry. You can team up with Beth and do a course.
Oh gosh! Oh gosh!
My gosh! You know, to brace, like they say on the airplane. So
yeah, the oxygen mask will drop down on that one. Won't they? You need them.
Everyone's got to need one.
all I'm saying is that's a big ask, Richard. That's a massive ask.
Well, I have fun.
Yeah, that calls to be neurology and neurotic, I think.
No, but I see what you mean there, Beth. I mean, sort of like to be sort of like interested in the paranormal, you can be superficially and interested and just enjoy the thrill of the chase, which is fair enough, and there's plenty of people out there that like that. But for me, and talking to you, yourself, and Paul and Kerry, we are very much sort of, it does take us a lot deeper into looking into other aspects which you wouldn't think would be even connected.
No, I remember one night I was looking into the, oh gosh, get this one. I ended up going down a window manufacturer and glass manufacturer to see, because certain elements will create an EMF field, and we had an EMF anomaly. And it was placed, the machine was placed by, it was a data logger, and it was placed by a window. So I wanted to see if that was actually what had caused the anomaly. So I went down into window manufacturer and glass manufacturer one night. That was riveting, that was.
That's it. I mean, even I had to contact Samsung, the phone manufacturer, for one particular bit of information.
Yeah.
You know, so it does lead you to all these sort of places. And you know what? I think I might do a blog on rabbits. I want to know why they're so nosy.
And it's funny, like you said, with the rabbit warren thing, when it comes to trying to find out more about a particular type of phenomena that you've heard, witnessed, or interviewed somebody for in a particular location. So as you said, you go into, you know, glass making place, and you know, I've gone to plumbers, and when they ask you why you're there, like, look, okay, so someone thinks there's like pipes blanging around. I just need to know if this place is okay. Can you come over? And there's kind of this silence. It's like, oh, oh, I just need a rational, like, can you just come over and just check it out, man? Because I'm like, it's literally, and trying to explain it that way is like, oh, it's almost like when people say, oh, so you work, and I work, and what do you do in your spare time? And it's like, okay, how am I going to handle this? It's almost the same kind of conversation. It's like, how is the real world going to situate, how or think of what I do? But like we say, from a professional perspective and from finding information on cases, like it becomes like you literally have to say, look, I'm doing this because someone thinks their home is haunted, and I need you to come in to help sort this out, because or find a reasonable explanation for this, or at least inspect it, because they're going to want to know why. It's like, oh, have you got rats? Have you got this? I don't know what I've got. We don't know. We think it's dead. We think it's dead.
That's just it. I mean, as investigators, we shouldn't be afraid to ask for expert help. And, in the term expert, I mean someone like an electrician or a plumber or someone with those sort of qualifications to debunk certain aspects, because then as an investigator, we can then put their reports into the mix as well. Yeah. So when we do give, logical explanations, we can say, well, we looked at the electrics, this is what it is, or the pipe work with the plumbers. We can use other experts. Doesn't make us experts, by no means, because we're not. We're always learning new things, so none of us are experts. We're maybe experienced, but not experts. But at the same time, you can use experts in the field and get their opinions on subjects. I mean, the police do it all the time, in their investigations.
Well,
they get psychologists and analysts and stuff like that to investigate just as much as they do. They put the whole case together and then report their findings.
Yeah.
And that's exactly our role in the paranormal.
But even with older cases, I was looking into East Drive quite extensively, and I had quite an interesting conversation about algae plumes, because I was trying to look at the phenomena and seeing if there had been a logical explanation. And they had green foam coming from their taps once, and I was looking into algae plumes because it's all natural sourced water sources in that area.
Yeah.
And actually, I can't prove it because it didn't happen at the time and stuff, but it kind of seemed like a really good explanation at the time. And I was like, oh, algae plumes. So, I now know about algae plumes. Who knew, right?
Yeah.
Anyway, on that note, we're going to take a quick break, and then we're going to carry on with this paranormal conversation just after this.
Hello, Harry Price here. If there's nothing me and my friends enjoy more here on the other side, it is to sit back and relax and listen to the Paranormal Concept Show, right here on the PAUK Radio Network. Broadcasting a plethora of interesting and informative content for all your paranormal needs. Find them across social media to keep up to date with forthcoming shows and all their other adventures. Hello, is there anybody there?
And welcome back to the Paranormal Concept Show, exclusive to the Paranormal UK Radio Network. As always, we've got Paul and Richard still in the studio, and the lovely Beth Darlington. Now, before the break, we were talking all about how this research can take you down into different rabbit holes. And one thing Beth has been out and about doing while she's hit the UK, she's actually been going quite a lot to the SPR, the Society for Psychical Research, and ASAP, which is another parapsychologist-y type place that you can go and get lots of information from. And I can never remember what ASAP stands for, so I do apologise. The Association of...
The study of spontaneous... So we
call it ASAP, okay, because everybody knows it as ASAP, but it's like great for paranormal research and phenomena information, basically. And they run a lot of courses. Both of these places run a lot of courses that you can go to, and study days, and have fantastic libraries, is all I'm going to say on that one. Nearly wet my knickers when I saw the SPR library.
You have good taste.
Mm-hmm. Just getting into the library was great. Loved to have got into the archive, as well. But anyway, so Beth, you stated one of your reasons for hitting the UK was actually because of this resources that were available in the UK that weren't accessible in Australia. And you've done quite a lot of these courses. So let's first of all, let's take a look at the differences between the two types of organisation. What's the main difference between the two?
The main difference between SPR, which is Society of Psychical Research, and ASIP, which is a little bit more about the study of a sort of anomalous phenomena, is SPR is a lot more academic. So it's a lot more based on research papers. People, a lot more from an academic background, tend to go to those particular type of events as well. So, and I think to me it's equally as important to learn and know from people who have written this information while they're still around, with all respect, but also at the same time the information that they hold is from, it's from 150 years on. So as you mentioned, their libraries is something to you kind of like salivating as you walk in, because like it's like I was like a candy store. It's like, where do I start, sort of thing. But it is very, very, very a lot more academically based. So a lot more from that perspective, where you're pulling from different types of sciences, social sciences, physical, all that kind of stuff, physics, all that kind of different types of sciences in this particular type of environment and type of learning environment. Then you have ASIP, which is a lot more about the kind of like the practical side of it. So it's okay. So you've got this information from a science-based thinking perspective. So what are you going to do with that? Now, really, that resonates with me a fair bit. More so for what I do and stuff that I can utilise as well. So it's a lot more. So say, for instance, recently I went to their training weekend for paranormal investigators, and it was a fantastic weekend. The information was very relevant. It's stuff that I could take out onto the field. It's not something just theory, research-based about the possibility of SPR is very psi-based in that regard. But ASIP is a lot more of a practical nature, a lot more going out there and learning, and I think their topics tend to be a lot more broader as well. So you're looking at NDEs and different types of NDEs, but not necessarily from an academic perspective. It can be from people's experiences or how to investigate it. So there's a lot more of a how-to, a lot more hands-on, a lot more practical with ASIP when it comes to that, like kind of what traditional, if you could say, paranormal investigators do. SPR is a lot more from an academic research background. Both need each other. Both I highly recommend. I think it's good to have a really good balance to go to and attend both organisations' events 100%, yeah.
They do quite a lot of conferences and study days, don't they? Both organisations do. When you go to I've always wondered, when you go to an SPR study day, is it where you are taking somebody's work and then progressing that, or is it just learning about that particular study?
It's like a chosen topic, and someone speaks about that chosen topic, and you make notes of it, and it's literally having a really good Q&A with that particular person about that. So you really kind of absolve yourself more so in it, and you can say challenge them a little bit if you so wish, or have any ideas. But it's like literally they'll say, look, this is particular topic, this is what we're talking about today, and like literally like a mini school session, if you could say.
That's do you not feel? I've only been once. I'll hold my hands up, and that was when somebody I know was speaking, and I still felt very shy, I suppose, of asking a question or putting an opinion forward on that, because you've got some amazing people sitting in the audience, and you're thinking, I don't want to sound stupid. You know what I mean?
I do, 100%.
You're coming up against people that have been in the field for tens of hundreds of years.
That's it. And that's exactly, I completely understand how you feel. It can feel very intimidating being in these environments with SPR. I've never really felt that with ASIP. I can understand your feelings with that with SPR, because you are probably on a very different dynamic when it comes to the type of people that are there. A lot of older people are there that have been there, that done that, have bought the T-shirt probably more times than you and I have been alive, and still going there. So, like I said, I could understand your hesitation in asking questions because you do hesitate to think, oh, okay, well, am I going to sound stupid by saying so? I played the new girl card, which is great, and that has helped me. So I'll just go, look, I'm here. Oh, I'm here from Australia. Like, I kind of just want to know, what about poltergeist? Like, I could totally, so that's my out. But at the end of the day, and the interesting thing about that is the times that I've been to SPR events, whenever it's finished and it comes to the chatting afterwards, I literally almost, with all respect, I almost get mauled. And I mean that in the nicest way possible, because it's intellectually mauled. So there are so many people come over going, we've not seen you here before. What are you doing here? How did you find out about us? We need to bring more younger people into these particular meetings and discussions, because at the end of the day, when these people, with all respect, do move on to the other side, whatever that looks like, they're going to need to fill they're going to need to backfill. There's got to be a renewed interest from younger people who want to continue this knowledge, and that's got to start now. I'm learning, as I said, I walk amongst legends. I'm walking amongst people that my mind explodes when I think of the knowledge and the research and the experiments and that these people have been able to conduct. So they're pushing and wanting more younger people to come into the SPR, and I think it's really important to. And as I said, I felt welcomed afterwards. After feeling like a complete knobhead, asking silly questions. But then I thought they were silly questions. But then at the back of those questions, other people said, that's a good point because of blah, blah, blah. So it's not an unwelcoming environment. It just can feel intimidating because, like you said, you're around people that have a lot of knowledge that probably would think, oh, geez, what she's doing here. But they need, people that are younger now, because they need to keep SPR going, because not everyone's going to survive everything. So from even without corona, it's just age itself. We all going to pass on at some point, and they want to be able to pass it on to people that really want to be able to be part of it.
That is an incredibly interesting point of that longevity for the SPR, and I found that when I went, as I've only been the once. I was only lucky enough to go the once so far. And it was like exactly what you say, a very older generation and very intimidating personally for me at that time. If I'd gone more, I probably would have felt more comfortable in that. But it's like you enter the halls of the SPR, and it's like, it is one of those feelings when you walk through the doors and you're sitting there and you're seeing the people that you've seen, in various documentaries or books you've read, and you're thinking, oh God, who's that? And then you find out who they are and you're thinking, oh my God. But they do an amazing online resource as well, don't they, the SPR?
Oh, great! Like when you're a member, you've got online access to so much of their online resources. You've also got a directory to the library. So one really good thing is if you're looking at researching a particular topic. So, say for instance, it could be about mind connection with, psychokinesis type stuff, with poltergeist activities. Like, okay, that's my topic. I want to start looking at some decent research papers or some journals or some really good, sort of database type stuff. You can go into their library online, check it out, pick a time, and then actually go there and pick and find the book out. So you can go in there and get there. Although I must admit, as we did mention before, Carrie, when you do walk into the library, you kind of like smell the knowledge, breathe it in, because you walk through the books. It's like,
it really is. Honestly,
in a really bad way, but
I know it was like, oh, where do you start? It was a question of where do you start in that library. I would say that, but I felt that when I went to the College of Psychical Research as well, for the launch of the Enigma of Rosalie. They have a library there too, and I felt like that there as well. It was just like, which book should I pick first? Which book should I pick first? And then it was like, we've got to go into the thing now. And I was like, oh my God, I've got to put all these books back now.
It's like they're almost plying them from your hands as you walk out the door. Yeah, no. That's quite a highly recommend. Yeah.
I want to
Highly
borrow
recommend
all of these books. I can't carry them, but I want to borrow them.
Take it.
And they have rare books there as well, books you won't get anywhere else as well, which are done. Sometimes those books are strictly whilst you're in the library only. But it is a resource that's worth bearing in mind if you're looking at a particular avenue to utilise again, isn't it? And like you say, they are online. They are, a lot of the talks are online as well that you can access if you're a member. And it's a resource that's worth doing. If you felt too intimidated to actually attend the talks that they do on a regular basis, and not the study days, but the information is all there, isn't it?
Yeah, oh, absolutely. And that's one thing I love about the fact that they're actually gone that step up and actually looking at and have that, sort of as an available resource in this day and age. It's great. Like, one thing I recommend is if you want to become a part of SPR, become a member. But if you are looking at a topic, research the topic, go into their library, find the books you want and go there, because you do get overwhelmed. You literally, it's like a kid in a candy store. I'll have these. Oh, look at that. Oh, that looks amazing. And you will get distracted. So make the most of your time if you want to go to the actual office and research your topic, that of anything that you want to, or you're specifically looking for. Get the references and the authors and what books you want, and then go to the actual library itself and make the most of your time there. But it really does feel like you're walking amongst legends. It's almost like walking amongst book legends as well when you go there too. It really does feel like that. You kind of feel a bit special as you do.
I was actually blown away when the library owner, Peter, I think he's the secretary of the SPR, actually recognised who I was, and I was like, what have I done? Why do you recognise me? I was like, I'm a bit scared now.
Oh, he's lovely. So sweet.
He's so lovely, but it was like, why do you know me? But they know a lot more than they give on. They keep their eye on the paranormal field quite extensively, don't they? What do you think they can add to the ghost hunting community, which is, do you think that the gulf is too wide between those particular two fields?
I agree with you there. I think there is too much, and I know that there is this, I guess you could say this, not this thought, but this want to be able to close that gap, because they know they need to. I would like to think of myself as someone who attempts to try and close that gap with the information I provide through Access Paranormal myself, because there are elements of the information I provide that actually come from this academic background. You wouldn't know it because of the way in which I present it. And that's what I say to them. Look, research papers are really important and they're vital, but you need an interpreter. You need someone to actually put it in layman terms and send it out to the people that actually will benefit from this, because there's information in that people will actually benefit from. So I personally would like to see myself as somebody helping bridge that gap. That's my biggest passion, I must admit, because there is so much academically that we can pick up and learn. But the way in which the information is provided to me, I never went to university. I never went to college. I don't have an academic background whatsoever. So that is like Swahili to me when I read some of it. But the information is important. It helps contribute to what I can do and learn and gain as an investigator. So, yeah, I think there is definitely a gap, but I know that they are wanting, like I said, bringing the newer and younger and people that are interested in this, but I think also at the same time the information they provide, there's got to be a way, there's got to be a medium somewhere. So, of course, having everything online is great. I think that's a fabulous idea, and they've obviously had that off the bat for a while now, but I think there needs to be at least some aspect where they've got their conference once a year, which I think is a good start. And it's good information, it's good research information, but it does, for someone who for myself, doesn't come from a university background, there are parts here and there that I do struggle with still. So I have to be my own interpreter, really, and interpret it to what information I gather for the rest that I can provide for people who actually actively investigate.
So when we talk about ASAP, I'm not as knowledgeable about ASAP, even though I've been a member for theirs. Their online resource isn't as strong, is it?
They've got more articles. They've got more helpful articles on ASIP's website. So it's not necessarily a library that you log into once you're a member. You've actually got a lot of information for not being a member for ASIP. So that they've got some great, really good practical stuff that, like, this is what you actually do when you're doing a proper field investigation, very field investigation based, which is a refreshing change when it comes from a scientific thinking background. So that their website is very much built on that perspective when it comes to available information. Yeah.
One of the main articles that I remember from the ASAP website was actually the research they'd done on orb phenomena.
Yep. And again, I use that link for people that have sent through information. Only recently I had a lovely individual that was quite convinced that their photo had something intensely haunted about it. I looked upon it without even really actually looking at it on a bigger screen, could tell straight away that it was just a dust orb. So then you go through the motions of explaining, and then, of course, the ASIP's information is actually quite a good sidestep for that. So I'll say, look, here's some information from a reputable organisation, and they've got photos, they've got examples. I really believe it's this. Look, I don't take away from your experience. I know that you've experienced something, but as far as your photo, which you're asking me to analyse, then from that perspective, I don't believe it to be paranormal at all. So you've got to really it's almost like being a part of the UN.
Yeah.
You literally have to find a way to sidestep. Yeah, yeah.
I've done that quite a few times, and some people are beyond help. They really are. This guy, they posted their picture on social media, and I posted a link to the orb from the ASAP, just explaining what it was and stuff like that. And he just turned around and said, yeah, but that's their opinion. And I thought, you know what, there's really no helping you. Really? But for people that don't know, the ASAP stands for the Association for the Scientific Study of Anomalous Phenomena.
There you go. We got there eventually.
My teeth back in for that one as well.
Yeah. That's why we all call it ASAP, everybody.
Yeah. It's a mouthful.
It certainly is. Now, they do conferences as well, don't they?
Yes, they do. They've got their next one, I think, is in August, I think. No, September. It's in September. Oh, no, I think it's either late August or early September is when they have it. They have it in Bath University, where I was at last year, and it was so good. It was like, I think I'd only been in the country for a week by that point, so I was like green around the ears, like, eyeballing everything, loving Bath. I've been to Bath before, but twist my arm, it's not a terrible, ugly city to walk around. Right. And yeah, exactly. Even at the time of year, it's like, oh, you just missed summer. I said, I don't care. It's still awesome anyway. I don't care. And the history and stuff. So I had a fantastic time. Met some great people that I'm still in contact with now. As I highly recommend it. It's such a great, good, healthy group of people there too. And what always surprises me with particular conferences like ASIP and SPR is the lack of paranormal groups that turn up. Always surprises me. It's the same in Australia. That you'll get maybe one group, that's it. And the room's full with like 50, 60 people. It's all paranormal enthusiasts. It's just always fascinates me.
It is a massive gap between. There is a massive gap between the investigating community, the ghost hunting community, and the more academic research side of people. Even though they're doing, they've been running and doing conferences for years. I mean, even the Ghost Club, you don't get a crossover very often between the two. It's two camps, and it's a shame because the information for both sides, if they joined together more, they would push the field forward more. Because without the cases that maybe the paranormal community are coming across, how can they investigate them to the level that needs to be investigated to get some answers without the academic groups, without that knowledge pool? Which, yes, it's there. It's accessible to people from both sides. And I do think this is a two-way street. It's not a one-way street. The investigative community need to reach out to those people, and those people need to reach out to the community too. I do think there's a massive gulf even, and I do think it's been tried many times. I mean, I've been trying myself for, on the radio, trying to be the translator, as you said earlier on, trying to bring that information forward, but it doesn't seem to be received very well. What can the ghost hunting community, or what can we do for the ghost hunting community that will get that message across clearer for them?
Oh, you asking me?
Well, anybody, because that's a difficult. It's a difficult one to answer, isn't it?
I think it's the way the information is presented. I think the way in which the events are presented. It does. I think it's got to be tailored to investigators a little bit. To me, it's a no-brainer. It's like when I see this kind of stuff, I'm there. I'm naturally interested. I also think there's a level of investigator that is not as common as people who just ghost hunt and want to kind of go out. So I think you really got to understand that there's two different sides to it when it comes to investigating and or ghost hunting, if you want to use that term. So I think it's the middle ground investigator that you need to appeal to, and then you actually need to tailor the information to them to say, hey, this is the information that's out there. As I said to me, I'm gobsmacked. To me straight away, like even in Australia for years, I was like, oh, I see there's a training weekend at ASAP. Oh my God, I'd love to go that. Oh my God, that'd be amazing. And, and I risked, Corona to be able to get there and back and stuff. I was surprised it was still running, so happy it was running. So, and very, very appreciative of the fact that I finally got to do it. So I think, it really does depend on how it's presented a little bit to that particular audience, because I think it is a very, very structured, particular type of person, but definitely not. It's not written for paranormal teams or groups, in my opinion. Anyone else want to chime in?
Boys,
no, I do agree. I agree with that. I think there is like different types of paranormal investigator out there, or / ghost hunter, and from my point of view, it's almost like we're all climbing a ladder and we're all at different levels, and you get to a certain level, and then that's when the academic side of things start kicking in, and you want to learn more and you want to research more, and then that's how you progress to the next few steps. But there are teams out there that are quite happy to do the whole thrill of the chase type thing. The best way to get information out to them is just put it on telly, on these the shows that go out. If it's on the telly, it must be true. That's a sort of level. Yeah. But then there are people that have investigated and done that, but then they've looked into what they've got and explained it away or whatever they've done, and then they've sort of progressed themselves. So I'm all in favour of sharing my experiences with other teams, because I've been doing it for 15 years now, so I've got quite a big experience. But there are people out there obviously with more experience than me that I'm learning from, and that's what I like about the paranormal field. I'm always learning and I'm always progressing. But I'm not knocking anyone that's lower down that ladder, because I was there once. It's just the way I see it.
I think, as you sort of said, Beth, there's certainly two levels of investigators. You have the sort of like your run-of-the-mill sort of paranormal investigators, sort of like ghost hunters, but then there is a progression. You go up into a more seasoned investigator, and I believe sort of those types of investigators are more happier to be more solitary. And from there, they can tend to sort of move up into the more academic circles. I don't know whether these sort of like, well, perhaps ASAP, but I don't know whether the SPR would be very accommodating of large groups of people turning up, all affiliated to sort of like groups. I'm not too sure whether that would actually work in either way, sort of to the paranormal investigator way or to the academic way.
Interesting you mentioned that. I think it'd be really interesting to see the reaction if a paranormal team or a couple of paranormal teams would turn up to an SPR event. It'd be interesting to see the interactions and the acceptance for those people who turned up who wanted to learn. So I think that would be an interesting experiment, I guess you could say, almost. So, if there's anybody, when all this stuff blows around, any paranormal teams that want to know about SPR events, go and check it out.
As you say, it would certainly be interesting. You go in the cloakroom and see all the hoodies hanging up and think, hang on, what's going on here?
Well, if there's a funeral, people will all be dressed in black. We'll all be ready to go. So
I don't know the answer to the question myself. I don't know. I just, from my personal perspective, from what I've noticed, is that if I had a more academic person on to talk, it didn't get listened to. Not to the level if I had a paranormal team on. And I found that incredibly frustrating, because it is trying to bridge that gap and bring that information into the field so it progresses, so people can get more out of their investigation rather than just copying a copy and paste of a television show. And I do wish TV shows would incorporate more of that, rather than referencing a brief history of a location that's half of it's not right anyway. Maybe reference, studies that have been done on things like psychometry or, the Phillips experiment or, those kind of things that we've talked about, or poltergeist or something along those lines. If that's relevant to the investigation that's going ahead, you could easily tie the two together and bring, put it out there as a format. And I think there needs to be more done, excuse me, by people that are now producing these shows to incorporate that, to bring their TV show forward as well, rather than the same old hashtag it's a demon.
Well, I think sort of like the TV show, the paranormal is looked upon by the TV companies as another form of reality television, isn't it, basically? There's not a huge sort of like difference between perhaps some of these ghost hunter shows and an episode of Love Island. They sort of seem to be pitching it to the same sort of audience.
Still stuck in the same old most haunted format with slight changes to it. Do we feel then that, as a general, it's a fame of this has been accused of a lot of teams over the time, particularly with the rise of YouTube channels and stuff like that, that it is just a fame and fortune hunting scenario rather than a research?
People that say fame and fortune and stuff like that, because just a general look at the paranormal, you're not going to make money out of this.
Yeah, someone should tell them that.
Maybe they should, yeah.
Hashtag saying.
I do think, obviously, the TV shows that do emulate, like Ghost Adventures and Most Haunted, the shows that emulate that on YouTube, they're trying to go for the fame and fortune. But you do get some that investigate and then do a tiny bit of research as well. And I think it's them that, okay, they might foul on getting some of the good research out there, but they think they're trying to help and progress, which, a bit of tweaking, I think they could get there. But I think some of them are trying to make a difference. But there are a huge majority out there that are literally just for fame and fortune, as much as they claim they're not.
Absolutely, and like I said, it's the middle ground investigator that there. It's all about intent. Yeah. It's all about what's your intent on this. Do you want to thrill seek, or do you want to help people? Do you want to find your answers? Do you want to research? Where do you fit with this? And then like we mentioned, and make all of you make very valid points. There is this middle ground investigator where it's not they're above the ghost chasing stuff. They want more answers. They're starting to be curious, but they're not academic, and the academic stuff is just not there. So it's kind of this middle part where and very few people, but at the same time it's not really being catered for as well as much. So it's, I completely understand where you're coming from with that, and I think definitely it's definitely about intent and where people want to go with their journey.
And I think that is where the give and take needs to happen from both sides, from the middle ground investigator and the, say, SBR. That is, I think the give and take there would be a more productive, as opposed from the SPR coming all the way down to sort of like the lower level of the sort of like the paranormal investigating ladder and trying to bring it up to their sort of middle ground, because I simply don't think that would work.
Nope. No.
No, but they've got to realise that there are people out there that have just started on their paranormal journey, so they are quite low down on that ladder.
But
You know, it's no fault of their own. They just starting at the bottom, so they've got to then sort of bring it down to their level to try and help them climb their ladder.
Oh, no, I totally agree with that, because when I started in the field, I mean, you know, you guys know I'm very spiritual-minded. I work in a very spiritual way. And my personal journey, when I first went in the field, and all was spirit manifestation. Do you know what I mean? When I first started. And I've progressed so far, so fast, actually, when I think about how far I've progressed in my personal journey. It's like, it's one of those things it is about that personal journey. It is that personal progression, isn't it? And I'm sure that we can all sit here and go, when I first, I had an interest all my life, but when I actually first started seriously looking at it, I very much question and find in conflict sometimes my spiritual beliefs regarding the scientific information that's come up and things I've researched since. And sometimes it backs it up as well. Sometimes it doesn't, and it's that progression. And it's felt, as I say, at times it's felt very in conflict with each other at times because of that. But that that shouldn't put you off. It shouldn't scare you. It should help you progress yourself.
Like I said, it's all about courage and intent. It literally is one or the other, or both. What's your journey? What's your intention for this? Like with you, like you've obviously gone through the path, like, okay, from a spiritual perspective, and then moved on and actually starting to take that part, but also then expand it. Definitely so, yeah. It's a personal journey,
It most certainly is. And we've all come at it from completely different perspectives and, different ways. And when we go out into the field, I've said this time and time again, I will go back to my spiritual basis rather than my knowledge basis, but I can look at it in a different way because my spiritual journey has progressed alongside it as well. Where I've learned things from the paranormal field, I've progressed my spiritual side alongside that and gone down a different avenue with my spiritual work in regards to more ritualised workings than what I class now as the woo-woo side of things, less new age, more occult almost. You know what I mean? Again, my spiritual journey has progressed alongside that because at the end of the day, for me, I need that personal experience, that personal validation that there is something going on. And then to look at it and go, okay, so what was that? Can I explain that from my knowledge? Can I research that? So I've been looking into psychometry recently, into that side of things, where research has been done on that I didn't even know about. And we've all been there's been a very sceptical perspective on that side of things in recent times, every doll's a haunted doll and stuff like that. But when you start looking at some of the work or the research papers that have been done on this, it actually it opens the mind again to the possibility that things retain an energy memory and that humans can pick that up when they don't even know what the object is. And I've only just learned that. And I went through it's absolutely ridiculous, how stupid. But now I've come almost like a full circle and gone, that's interesting. And for me, working with crystals and minerals and things like that, I'm devising certain experiments for my personal interest, my own personal interest, that may not ever be SPR level or ASAP level, but for me, it's opened that door and gone in a full circle. So this is why I find it so interesting, the research side of it, as much as the practical hands-on side of it that we all love as well.
So this is why I like working with Kerry, especially out in the field when we do investigations, because the amount of places we've gone, and I come at things from a very logical and sceptical position. And when Kerry does her thing,
I love it.
It does increase activity to a certain degree. And it's like, why is that doing it? What are those crystals doing to the atmosphere or the environment to create this activity? What do you know what I mean? And I just go through certain thought processes myself, and I come up with random, trying to think outside the box as what could cause it. and then me and Kerry have this like big discussion about it, and we do form our own ideas.
Big row.
It's not a big row, but it's just about. I've got complete respect for what Kerry does, and I'm sure it's vice versa. But
yeah, of course.
we listen to each other's opinions and questions, and we work very well together, and we just come out with all these theories outside the box, and then we do shows and blogs on them.
But it's going back to, it's that conversation, isn't it? It's reaching out and having that conversation. And we're in a very blessed position where we get to talk to people like Beth and other people that we've had on the shows over the 4 or 5 years we've been doing paranormal radio now. And, those conversations make you think. They bring up a different perspective. Yeah. It leads you down a viewpoint, maybe a different viewpoint. And when we've had conversations, Beth or Richard or Paul or whoever, challenging someone's perspective is not a bad thing. It is not a rude thing as long as it's done with respect, isn't it?
Yeah. Absolutely.
It's certainly, sort of like when me, Paul, Kerry get together, we we don't take to social media afterwards, sort of slagging each other off, stuff like that. We've got.
Well,
we do. joking.
We do. We just won't let Kerry in that group.
It's just you and me in there, isn't it? Yeah.
I actually keep
seriously,
my social
it's just
very, very quiet generally about things. I'll promote, shows and stuff like that. But as for most other things, I keep it very private and very quiet. And feel sometimes that because we're not as vocal on socials, that maybe we are doing a disservice. What do we think of that, Beth?
When you mean disservice, what do you mean in the sense of not being politically open as far as things, or
because we don't put our opinion out there, no matter how controversial. It's like maybe we are doing a disservice and not putting that information out there. I don't know. It's a difficult one. I don't like online rowing, or trolling as I call it, so I don't put it out there.
I think for me, people are going to find out anyway. That's how I've taken it. And I've had to navigate many a paranormal storm over the years. And there have been some pretty decent ones in Australia over the last 4 or 5 years. Let me tell you that. But Yep. It's almost like brace. Like I said before, it's literally the same thing again. But the reason and how I've been able to get around that is because, I don't give it a voice. That's the first thing, because half the reason why someone will be that way is the first thing. But even if you know things, it's to me, for myself, it's not up to me to be the one to say or to publicize it. People are going to find out anyway. People are going to find out the truth anyway. I'm here to provide information about paranormal investigating, trying to bridge the gap between academics to a normal, your bog standard paranormal investigator who I consider myself as, but is interested in that information. That's my focus. That's my intent. My intent is not to reveal stuff that that goes out of that particular box, because people will find out. I've had so many people come up to me over the years going, "Oh, this is happening to this person, that's happening to that person." That's lovely, nice, thanks for coming. That's how it is. It's literally like a shop. Like you walk in, this is oh, that's great, okay, cool, thank you, and they wander off, and I'll just keep going about my day. It's not my that's not what my platform is used for. That's not what my business platform is used for. The information is great, wonderful, but people. That's the other thing, that people can make up so much crap about other people as well, and that's the other thing to keep in mind too. I'm an investigator for paranormal phenomena. I'm not an investigator for people's crap, basically. So, and that's how I look at it. It's like, okay, that's cool. That's what's happening, and you do. And as you guys would see, there can be all sorts of horrible things you see going on. People ripping people off, people being terrible to other people. There's all this location exclusivity crap that goes on. We've all been there, bought the T-shirt and then some. But it's if you give attention to it, then you give it a voice. So to me, I'm like, you know what? That's what's happening. That's not my platform. I'm not going to involve myself with that on a public perspective. I've got my intentions. This is, and sometimes it can also help you from a business perspective to know, to keep in mind of who you who you choose to do business business with or not. Take it with a grain of salt. We are investigated. We should be fact-finding if you really want to go there. But at the end of the day, use it as information to see if it can help you. But at the end of the day, that stuff's other people are going to find it out. And it is difficult because sometimes there can be stuff that can be so morally, like eating acid, that you sit there and go, I can't believe I have to sit on my hands and not say anything because of this person's doing blah, blah. But at the end of the day, that people are going to find out, and let them find out in their way that they need to know. Don't be that instigator, because in the end of the day, it's not going to do you any good.
No, absolutely.
Well
I totally
said.
agree with that.
Yeah, very well said.
I second that.
Yeah, my point of view in this is that I tend to only deal with people that like to learn more and want to progress. I'm always quite happy to talk to anyone about my opinions and my paranormal journey and share my knowledge, but all I ask for is a bit of respect. And there are so many people out there that don't want to learn, and they're the type of people that get on my nerves sometimes. And there are people out there that will lie and cheat the system and stuff like that, and they're the ones that are not worth not worth giving any time of day to, because they will soon disappear.
You just have to be discerning, don't you? If you don't like what someone's doing or the way they're acting or they're being disrespectful, particularly on the socials, there is that discernment of unfollow, block. You don't have to. And I think that's a point in question, is you don't have to if it's not good for you. If it's not making you progress your own journey, then you don't have to. You can step out of that arena if you want to. So it's your own discernment you have to look at and be mindful of your own mental well-being, going back to where we started at the top of the show, your own mental well-being and positivity around you, and focusing on the people that do bring that and feed that for you, not the ones that are wrapped up in the petty minor stuff, as it were.
And you'll find yes.
It's just going along and realising once the game starts, and recognising the game, and then you can actually step off and just step aside. Once the situation starts to go down that route, you've just got to be discerning, as Kerry said, of who you deal with.
Very much so. Very much so.
I think the more you do it, the more you take that view when it comes to navigating the paranormal waters of this world. You'll find that you'll come across it less and less over the years, and that's what I found as well. You'll start to attract the right people to you that think on the same level as well, and you'll come across it less and less, and you'll see less of it as well. And that's a good thing. That can only ever be a good thing.
I'm looking forward to the day.
So let's ask a basic paranormal question to you, Beth. What's the most scariest experience you've had in the paranormal field?
Love it.
Oh, bless. I had this article written up in a magazine in Australia, and it's about an experience I had here in the UK. People who have been following me for a while will know this story very, very well. I was at the Ragged School Museum in East London, and I was there with a group, as I said, probably about 12 years ago now. Gosh, I'm showing my age. And I'm only 21. So, and crap. And I was there with a group of people, and as I said, like I'd only been in the UK for probably only maybe about 4 or 5 months. So I'm thinking this is what it's going to be like all the time when it comes to paranormal phenomena. But anyway, so it was a very, very intense experience. So what happened was we were standing in a group, and we were in a circle, and there was 2 people to the other side of the room that had their fingers on what was like an outdoor type table, sort of kind of like what you would have near a poolside kind of thing, very light. It was white as well. It was sort of like an oblong shape sort of thing, and four legs, and there was 2 people either side with their fingers on the top. And the person running the event said, okay, right, who's in here? And she started to really get into it. I'm thinking, oh, that's a bit intense, right? So I was in a circle, that sort of thing. Then the table started move. And I've not seen tables move like this prior to that. Afterwards, I have. But it was a shift. It was like a bit of a shift and a move. And the people, it was the reactions of the people on the table that really got me at the time. I'm thinking they look way too surprised and intensely. I could see fear, basically. I could see fear. I could certainly smell it. So it was like literally they had their hands on the table. And she was antagonizing a bit. She said, come towards us. And because we were the group at the other side of the room. And that's one thing, as I said, the reason why this experience has stuck with me for so long is because how the table moved. So one side moved up and down, the other side moved up and down in a walking position. It wasn't a shifting, it wasn't a dragging, it was a walking position. And it absolutely took me by surprise. I'd never seen anything like that before in my life. I sat there, eyes boggled. I was actually for the first time quite terrified, by walking furniture. But it was literally lifting up and down, and it moved. I walked across the room to our circle and then stopped. And the person said, come on, you can come into the side of the circle. And it wouldn't move. And then it would walk. It walked, I think, about a metre and a bit towards the side to try and get into what was this circle of people holding hands and having positive energy. And I'm thinking, what's going on here? I was here just for a ghost investigation. My mind about how objects move and all sorts of stuff was going on. So this went on in total, it went on for about 15 minutes, which now looking back is a very long time when it comes to possible paranormal phenomena. I wish I could go back to that time with the mind I have now to actually try and figure out what was going on. The only way I can explain it is possible PK. At that time when she kept antagonizing and it wouldn't be able to get through our group, it stopped. Everything just stopped and you could feel the change in the air, that something didn't feel as scary anymore and things kind of left. But that one thing I always say to people, when you have an experience like that, which is a possible paranormal experience that is quite intense, it actually changes you. It changes your thoughts and ideas on what happens. You cannot be the same person again once you experience stuff like that. You question more so, and it stays with you. It's almost like, I'm not say like a traumatic event. I wouldn't say that. It's like almost like a wanted traumatic event, but it does change you. You cannot be the same way, and that's what happened to me.
Wow. I've never seen a table move.
Oh, I had one chasing after me a year ago.
Oh, wow. Where was that?
That was at a location in North Queensland in Australia. I was with an event there, and we were doing sort of table tipping to the point where the table was chasing me around a pool table. So the same thing, people had their hands on the top of the pool table, similar situation, and it was literally, I was running around with the video camera trying to get away from it, and it was chasing me around.
Oh my gosh.
So the speed it was coming around and that's, to me, it was another thing. And like, is it more PK? What's going on here? This kind of stuff. So yeah. No walking, just shifting and running after. Yeah, welcome to my world.
I need to get out of the film more, clearly. Paul?
Yeah, sure.
See, what gets me about that sort of thing is that you'll have like the table rocking, for example. I've done this on various occasions, and then when you sit there and go, right, okay, if the spirit here, can you make a noise? And then you get the weakest tapping noise you could ever experience, and it's like, really. You've just been throwing a table around the room. You can do louder than that.
True. Yeah.
I've only ever sort of been involved in one table tipping session, and that was I found that actually quite difficult. And that wasn't all that long ago. It was with Kerry and Paul at your birthday do, Kerry, was it? Rotham Towers, but
it was very heavy. It was
Yeah.
incredibly heavy, though. That was the thing that struck me. Where we was doing it was actually on a display thing, which was incredibly heavy. Which is that a factor? If it's PK and you're the one who's giving that energy for that phenomena in your head already, before you're not even consciously thinking about it, that's heavy. That's a heavy piece of furniture. Whereas like for Beth, that's like quite a light piece. Like she said, it was very light. So you're perception, your mindset may be more important in that. If it is something we're creating, we would know it was heavy, so it's not possible to move. You're almost blocking that before you start to do that, if that makes sense. If that's coming from us, that is. Right? If we've already got that mindset, without even being consciously aware of that mindset, that it's too heavy, or it's a heavy piece of a heavy piece of table, that could be the key. So if we had done it with a lighter table, we might have had a better response from that, because our mental mindset is, oh, this can move. Whereas with that piece of equipment we were using, or that table we were using at that time, it was... it would have surprised me if it had moved, put it that way.
Well, we did try, didn't we? We was sort of, But
then it does lead into that question of the psychological mindset people go into an investigation, correct?
Yes, absolutely. Front loading, as they call it. You know, like you go into a place, you're already expecting it to be haunted, then stuff happens, you're going to associate it straight away anyway. So, yeah, of course.
What is interesting is, although the table didn't move, people were reporting experiences that they were feeling whilst we were doing that. And that becomes interesting. So it's almost like it was like manifesting outside that, around the table, rather than being focused on the table.
Yeah, because that was quite an interesting evening away from sort of like the experiments, because we had a lot of Kerry's friends there, and it was basically people that weren't really sort of... hadn't really paid much attention to this before, sort of like the paranormal investigating or anything, but some of them were reporting as a sort of strange sort of feelings, weren't they, and stuff like that.
For me, that was absolutely a fascinating evening in crowd watching, because they're all muggles, never investigated before, don't really know about the paranormal. They only know bits that I've told them that, you know, over the years. And bless them, like, because it was my birthday, they was all like, it was a special one as well, so they were all like, what would she like to do? I know, we'll take her out investigating. And they were all like crapping themselves. It was absolutely... I mean, at one point I had to take one of them to one side and say, right, because off the back of a spirit box session, and actually give them like the logical explanation as to what was going on, because they'd freaked themselves out so much on the investigation about it all.
Yeah, we're saying, oh no, nothing's happening really. Yeah.
Oh, no. What you're seeing is not what you're seeing.
Yeah, look at it in this way. We're not getting full sentences, so your mind might be jumping to an assumption that it's a word that you want to hear, and it's not actually the word, it's just your brain's just looking for patterns and blah, blah, blah. And honestly, it was like really funny.
Oh, bless.
It was great. But it was... And I was thinking, while I was doing it with and these are all my close friends, you know, so this is my muggle circle that I hang with. I thought, first of all, bless them for all putting themselves through that. When we was at the hotel afterwards, they were like, I can't believe you do that. That's like on a regular basis, you do that. Like, yeah, I love it. It's absolutely brilliant. And then the other side of it was like they were going, I'm never doing that again. Freaked themselves out. But I was thinking, that's a public event, effectively, with people that haven't been before. That's the kind of thing that you're going to get. You're going to get people coming in and getting freaked out by things that have happened. And they've gone away, had a great experience. But you've got that knowledge on the other side that thinks, a lot of that's explainable.
Yeah, exactly. That's it. And that's the experience. And, you know, and like you said, bringing people in going, oh, you know, is this what you do? It's like, yeah, this is my thing. This is my surprise. This is my side thing.
Yeah, exactly. Now, there is a big thing going on in the field at the moment. EVP experimentation seems to be a big fad at the moment. Things go through fads, don't they? And it seems to be EVP seems to be the focus at the moment. What's your take on that?
I think the more experimentation, the better. I think at least with EVP it's a little better than with demonic stuff or haunted dolls, personally. I think at least it's kind of throwing back a little bit to a bit of the ITC side of stuff. It is. There's a couple of experiments I've been a part of where, you know, they do use a lot of audio recording and also using a ghost box. I do take that with a grain of salt with the whole ghost box thing, because we really don't know. And of course, it's audible pareidolia. Our brains are built to survive, so it's a little bit more fallible in that way. But I still think it's worth exploring. I don't think it's worth not exploring. We don't know really what we're dealing with. I think the more people that do this and get some answers. But the worst thing about us is it's not usually in a controlled way or in a repeatedly controlled way where the information is then gathered and put somewhere with other information that's also being gathered. So that's kind of where I get a bit Debbie Downer on it. So, but, at least people are out there doing stuff. At least they've got a bit of a focus and saying, okay, well, we're going to try this and see if we're going to get anything from it. And again, it's all about intent.
Yeah, it is interesting how you see for ebbs and flows in the field, isn't it? When you're looking at the investigation community, there does seem to be this ebb and flow of various, fad is too frivolous a word, but that's the only way I can explain it at the moment in my head. It's just like it feels very faddy at the moment. It's EVP. A little while ago, it was the haunted doll thing, and we ebb and flow through it. And programs like Helia has brought up the Estes experiment, which loads of people are trying at the moment. But I always think experimentation is good, but keep repeating it. Like you say, be critically minded, see where you can improve it, see where maybe I would do things slightly different to how they would have done it in Helia personally. You know what I mean? To bring that maybe more relevant. But you deal with the circumstance you have at the time as well. It's very good. Hindsight's a wonderful thing, guys, right?
Mm. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But I don't think that's a bad thing to do experiments. I mean, Paul, you've been trying a new experiment. We've tried this ourselves, haven't we, with the phone experiment?
Yeah, absolutely. And it still baffles me, to be fair. We basically we was at a location and we put a mobile phone. We had two mobile phones. We called each other, and then we put one of the phones in an empty room, and the other was down in the hub room, and we got what sounded like a movie playing in that room. And as he was asking, like, "Hello, is anyone there?" we was getting responses back as well. Wow. Don't have a clue what that was about, like what caused that. We went so far as to contact Samsung because that's who made the two phones, and we was like, is there anything that can interfere with that signal or like intercept it so that it could possibly be another signal from somewhere else? And they were like, no, not unless you've got some really significant equipment, you can't do it. So we're just at a loss at what that could have been. And there are plenty of teams out there now that are recreating it, but not investigating it. That's, that's a bit of a bugbear for me. But at the end of the day, people can do the experiment, that's fine. I've not got a problem with them doing it or recreating it. But it would be nice for them to look into it a bit more in depth. And try and rip it to shreds, because that's what I want. I want to know why we got what we did. Not many people have got the music like we did, because we asked Andy, who's one of the managers at the PA UK network, and he basically said, "Oh, I can identify the film that was from, and that was Night of the Demon." So we even got to find out what the movie was, that whatever spirit was watching it. So, was it spiritual, was it a time slip, or is there some other logical explanation for it? Just haven't got a clue.
I mean, there was the sort of like we did have the thought of was it being transmitted that night, and I done a bit of research, and the last time that was actually broadcast on terrestrial TV in the UK was in 2010. So, it wasn't even being broadcast on any UK network at the time. It was odd.
Yeah.
Anyway, on that note, guys, we've actually come to the end of the show.
Oh, have we?
I believe it or not, yeah, we have actually come to the end of the show. So I'd like to thank you so much,
Does the time
Beth.
fly?
It certainly does. Thank you so much, Beth, for joining us tonight. It's been a fascinating conversation from lots of different aspects of the paranormal.
It's been wonderful.
Just give everybody a shout. Where can they go and find you?
On social media, accessparanormal.com is my website. Also, you can find me as Beth Darlington on Facebook as well, as Access Paranormal on Facebook, and also on Twitter, and also on Instagram as Access Para.
Thank you very much for joining us and being so insightful with what you've been bringing forward to the conversation. So, guys, all that's left to do is say good night.
All right.
Good night.
Everybody.
Good night.